My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 38, I thought I'd built a life that could weather any storm. For 10 years, my husband David and I filled our Portland home with laughter, plans, and promises I believed were unbreakable. We had a rhythm: morning coffee on the porch, late-night talks about our future, a shared calendar pinned to the fridge with dreams of travel, and maybe a second home by the coast. But betrayal doesn't just crack your foundation, it buries you in the rubble, forcing you to dig through every memory to find what was real. This isn't just the story of how I learned David was unfaithful, it's a labyrinth of secrets that unraveled my world, each twist more disorienting than the last, leading me to a strength I never knew I carried. It was a gray November evening, rain drumming softly on the windows when my life began to shift. I was clearing the table after a solitary dinner, the kind that had become too common. David had texted at noon, his words curt: "Stuck at the office. Big project. Don't wait up." His 9th late night that month, maybe more. I'd stopped counting. I wanted to trust him, to silence the unease that had crept into my chest over weeks. He'd been distant, fewer kisses, clipped answers, his phone always buzzing like it had a life of its own. I wasn't the suspicious type, not until that night rewrote everything. His phone sat on the kitchen counter, forgotten in his morning rush. It vibrated once, then again, insistent, pulling my eyes from the dishes. A name flashed: Lauren. My heart stuttered, a cold prickle spreading across my skin. I told myself it was nothing, a client, a colleague, but the buzzing felt personal, like a challenge. My fingers hovered, guilt gnawing at me. This wasn't me snooping, doubting. But the phone buzzed again, and I tapped the screen. The message was a blade: "Last night was magic. Can't wait for tomorrow." My breath caught, the room tilting. I scrolled, hands trembling, each text a deeper cut: plans for secret dinners, photos that burned my eyes, private jokes that mocked our marriage. David, my partner, my anchor, was living a double life, and I was the fool who hadn't seen it. I sank to the floor, the phone heavy in my lap, my mind racing through every missed sign. Late nights he blamed on client dinners, weekend conferences with no itinerary, the new watch he'd bought on a whim. How long had this been going on? Hours blurred, the rain outside a steady hum, until David walked in at 2 a.m., his coat damp, his face tired but unguarded. I was still on the floor, the phone glowing like a confession. "Who's Lauren?" I asked, my voice low, brittle, like glass about to shatter. He froze, his keys clattering to the counter. Then he laughed, a sharp, defensive bark. "What are you doing with my phone, Sarah? That's private." His tone was accusing, turning the knife back on me. "Private?" I stood, holding the screen up, the words glaring. "You're texting another woman about your nights together, and I'm the one crossing lines?" My voice cracked, anger and hurt colliding. "How long, David? How long have you been lying?" He sighed, like I was a child overreacting. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Lauren's just a friend from the firm. You're paranoid." But his eyes darted, avoiding mine. I read one of her messages aloud, explicit, undeniable, and his jaw tightened, the lie collapsing. "Fine," he spat, stepping closer, his voice low and mean. "Maybe I needed something you weren't giving me. You're so predictable, Sarah. Lauren's different. She makes me feel alive." His words were poison, rewriting our decade together. Alive? I'd spent years building our home, supporting his career, believing we were partners. "You don't get to blame me," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "You vowed to love me, David. This is your betrayal." I wanted him to feel the weight, to see my pain, but he shrugged, his eyes cold. "Maybe I'm done pretending we're happy," he said. "Lauren gives me something you stopped offering years ago." Years. The word was a sledgehammer, smashing every memory I'd held dear. I didn't sleep that night, my mind a storm of questions. Instead, I turned pain into action. I opened our bank accounts, something I hadn't checked in months, trusting David to handle our finances. What I found was worse than the texts: withdrawals I couldn't explain, $400 for a dinner I hadn't eaten, $1,500 for a hotel I'd never visited, $700 for jewelry I'd never worn. His email, still logged in on our shared laptop, was a treasure trove of deceit: reservations for weekend getaways, receipts for gifts I'd never received, confirmations for flights he'd never mentioned. Each discovery was a fresh wound, but the worst was realizing Lauren wasn't a fleeting affair. He brought her into our world, our home. The thought of her in our kitchen, our bedroom, made my stomach churn, like our sanctuary had been poisoned. I came home early the next day, needing to breathe, to escape the chaos in my head. A black SUV sat in our driveway, unfamiliar and bold. My pulse hammered as I slipped inside, quiet as a shadow. Their voices drifted from the dining room, David smooth and confident, hers light and teasing, like they were sharing a private world. They were laughing, glasses clinking, as if my life wasn't unraveling. I stepped into the doorway, and the room went silent. David's face paled, his fork frozen midair. Lauren, seated at my table, just smirked, her red lipstick a stark contrast to her calculated calm. "Sarah," David stammered, "you're home early." "I could ask you the same thing," I said, my eyes locked on Lauren. She didn't flinch, just crossed her arms, daring me to react. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice trembling but sharp. Lauren tilted her head, unfazed. "He said you'd be dramatic. Maybe take a breath, honey." Her arrogance lit a fire in me. I stepped forward, fists clenched, but David grabbed my arm, his grip bruising. "You're making a scene," he hissed, pulling me back. I yanked free, my voice rising. "A scene? You're cheating in our home." I turned to Lauren. "Leave or I'm calling the police." She stood slowly, her smirk never fading. "Fine. Call me later, David." She brushed past me, her perfume a lingering insult. David glared, but I didn't back down. "She's gone," I said, my hands shaking. "Now explain." He didn't. He stormed upstairs, the door slamming like a final dismissal. I stood alone, realizing this wasn't just an affair, it was a battle, and I was done playing the victim. That night, I became a detective in my own life. Fueled by rage and sleeplessness, I gathered every scrap of evidence, screenshots of texts, bank statements, receipts for things I'd never seen. An email stopped me cold, a lease agreement for an apartment downtown, signed by David, not for us but for him and Lauren. He wasn't just cheating, he was building a new life, planning to leave me in the dust. Then came the first twist, a hidden folder on his cloud drive labeled Work Docs. Inside were photos, not just of Lauren, but of another woman, Jenna, time-stamped weeks ago. 2 affairs? My head spun, but I kept digging, saving every file, every betrayal. By dawn, I'd found a third name, Tara, tied to flirty texts from months back. David wasn't just unfaithful, he was a juggler, balancing lies with a skill I'd never suspected. I called my lawyer, Kate, at 7 a.m., my voice steady despite the chaos. She didn't flinch at the evidence. "This is more than infidelity," she said, scanning my files. "He's committing fraud, draining your accounts. We'll make him regret this." Her confidence was a lifeline, pulling me from despair. I didn't stop with Kate. I called David's sister, Emily, who'd always been my rock. "I hate telling you this," I said, my throat tight, "but David's cheating. And he's stealing from us." Emily's silence was heavy, then angry. "I'll tell Mom and Dad," she said. "They need to know." By noon, his parents were livid, their faith in him shattered. When David came home that evening, divorce papers sat on the kitchen table, stark and non-negotiable. He stared, then scoffed. "You're serious? Throwing away 10 years? "You threw it away," I said, unflinching. "Sign, or I send everything to your boss, your friends, your precious clients. Let's see how Lauren likes the truth." His jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The next day I escalated. An anonymous email went to his firm, screenshots, receipts, enough to spark an investigation. By evening he was under review, his corner office dreams crumbling. I felt no guilt. He built this house of cards. But David wasn't one to surrender. Days later he cornered me in the garage, his eyes wild. "You think you're winning?" he hissed. "I know things, Sarah. Things that'll ruin you." His threat sent a chill down my spine, but I stood tall. "Try me," I said. "I've got nothing to hide." He backed off, but his words lingered, a shadow of doubt I couldn't shake. The first major twist came via a call from Mia, a friend from David's office I hadn't spoken to in years. "Sarah," she said, her voice low, "I saw David last week, not with Lauren, with someone else. A brunette at a club downtown. They were close." My stomach dropped. "Another woman?" I dove back into his emails, finding a trail to Jenna, flirty, recent, and explicit. Then I found Tara's messages, older but just as damning. David wasn't just cheating with Lauren, he was running a network of affairs, each woman a piece in his game. The second twist hit like a freight train. A package arrived unmarked on my doorstep. Inside was a thick folder, bank statements, photos, notes in David's handwriting. Lauren, Jenna, Tara, even Claire, a contractor we'd hired to remodel our bathroom years ago. He'd charmed them all, extracting money, trips, favors. A note stood out, scrawled in his careless script. "Lauren's asking questions. Push Jenna if it blows up. Sarah's too trusting to notice." Trusting. He'd counted on my blindness, and I'd played the part. I didn't know who sent the package, maybe Mia, maybe one of his lovers, but it was a weapon. I took it to Kate, who nearly dropped her pen. He's not just a cheater, she said. He's a predator. This could mean jail time, fraud, theft, maybe worse. She filed charges citing loans he'd taken in my name. $20,000 I'd never seen, hidden in small increments. While Kate built the case, I struck at David's core. I sent the folder to his parents, who cut him off completely. His mother called, sobbing. How could he do this to you? She asked. I had no answer, just relief that they saw him clearly. I contacted his women anonymously, sending proof of his lies. Jenna replied, he's garbage. I'm out. Tara was blunt, thanks. He's done. Claire didn't respond, but word spread. She'd keyed his car outside his gym. A small but satisfying rebellion. David fought back online, posting tearful videos about my vendetta. But the evidence was too heavy. Friends unfollowed, his comments filled with scorn. A local blog ran a story, Portland XX Web of Lies Exposed, and his name became a warning. He thought he could spin it, but truth doesn't bend. The third twist was seismic. Kate called late one night, her voice tense. David's account's linked to a shell company, she said. Lauren's name's on it, tied to offshore funds. This isn't just an affair. It's organized fraud. My head spun. Lauren wasn't his lover. She was his partner, scamming others like me. Kate handed it to the DA, who was building a case against them both. Days later, a fourth twist landed. A text from an unknown number. Check the guest room closet. Heart pounding, I found a locked box behind old coats. Inside, a USB drive and a note. He's worse than you know. Elsie Lauren? The drive held recordings, David and Lauren plotting, laughing about marks they'd conned, including me. One clip was brutal, David saying, Sarah's too soft. She'll stay loyal no matter what. I sent it to Kate, who called it game over. The DA moved fast, but Lauren vanished, likely abroad. David, oblivious, showed up at the house, banging on the door. Sarah, please, he yelled. Lauren set me up. You have to believe me. I opened the door a crack, chain locked. Believe you? I said, my voice ice. You made your choices. I shut him out, his pleas fading as I walked away. The fifth twist came weeks later, when Detective Ruiz called. We found a storage unit in David's name, he said. Fake IDs, contracts, names of dozens he's scammed. You're not alone. My knees weakened. David hadn't just betrayed me. He'd built an empire of deceit, preying on trust across states. Ruiz needed my evidence to dismantle it. I agreed, not for revenge, but to stop him from hurting others. But the twist didn't end there. A sixth shock arrived via Mia, who called sobbing. Sarah, I have to tell you something, she said. I knew about Lauren. David swore it was a fling, begged me not to tell you. I'm so sorry. Her confession stung, but it wasn't her fault. David's charm had fooled us all. I forgave her, but it deepened the betrayal, knowing even friends had been complicit. Then came the seventh twist, buried in the storage unit's files. Among the contracts was a letter, handwritten by David, dated years ago. If Sarah ever finds out, pivot to plan B. Lauren's the exit. Sarah's too emotional to fight. Emotional. He'd banked on my weakness, but he'd miscalculated. The eighth twist was personal. Cleaning out the attic, I found a journal I'd kept early in our marriage. Dreams of kids, a farmhouse, growing old together. Tucked inside was a photo of us, smiling, and on the back David's handwriting, my forever. The irony burned. He'd planned our future while plotting his escape. The final twist came from Kate months later. Lauren's been caught, she said. She flipped on David, gave the DA everything. He's facing 10 years, fraud, conspiracy, the works. Lauren had saved herself, leaving David to drown. I felt no joy, just closure. The divorce finalized soon after. David ordered to repay $25,000 he'd stolen. His assets were frozen, his name a headline. Conman's empire falls. Lauren was in custody, her own lies catching up. I didn't care about their fate. They'd built their prison. Rebuilding was jagged. Some days betrayal choked me, whispering I'd been blind. Others I felt unstoppable. I started gardening, coaxing life from soil, a metaphor for my healing. I ran half marathons, each mile reclaiming my strength. Friends rallied, their laughter a balm. I launched a blog, sharing my story anonymously. It went viral, women worldwide echoing my pain and power. I wasn't alone. David thought he'd break me, but he didn't know my fire. The twists, Lauren's scheme, the storage unit, Mia's guilt, David's letter, showed me I was never just a wife. I was a survivor rewriting my story, and no lie could dim my light.